Mark Moore always believed he was in charge of his life. He'd built a successful career as COO and co-owner of Segovia Inc., a leading provider of global internet protocol services to the U.S. Defense Department. But on a Saturday morning in May 2007, this enterprising, athletic husband and father of two had a stroke at 46. It is an extra special treat to be welcoming you here, Mark, looking so well, with such a story to tell. You're taking us to a scary place because you're American. 800,000 Americans have a stroke every year?
That is correct.
How many of them survive?
And that, fortunately, a good number survive. But what I would tell you is just to say that every 40 seconds, someone in America suffers a stroke. Every 4 minutes, someone in America dies from a stroke. So, it's a scary proposition. And the fact of the matter, strokes are the #1 cause of adult disability in the United States. So it's a serious issue.
Well, you are a national ambassador for the American Stroke Association. May is National Stroke Awareness Month in America. Canada, we picked June to give this focus. And we're going to get into your story, but you just arrested me with the fact that 80% are preventable?
That's correct. If people will be willing to monitor cholesterol, blood pressure, alcohol drinking, smoking, obesity, diabetes, and then obviously trying to exercise, we can lessen the chances of us having a stroke.
Well, we've just heard definitively, if you didn't already know, forget those diet drinks. That aspartame crosses the blood-brain line, and it's directly tied to strokes. Wow, tell us how this health crisis came into the life of a man who was so successful, athletic. You played basketball every week.
Correct. And in 2007, at the age of 46, I started experiencing severe migraine headaches at the beginning of the year. Went to see my doctor, who recommended that I go see a specialist, a neurologist, who ran a litany of tests to determine what was going on. This went on for about 5 months. They were not able to determine what was causing the migraine headaches. And then finally, the Saturday before Mother's Day in May of 2007, I experienced my first stroke as I was going to help coach my son's baseball practice. Went to the hospital. While still in the hospital, the Monday after Mother's Day, I suffered my second stroke, and due to complications from the second stroke, I had to perform life-saving brain surgery.
Oh boy. I mean, it was shocking to read when you thought you were going to be leaving the hospital in a few days because they thought it was a TPA.
That's right.
Tissue plasminogen activator is what's given.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
To relieve the blood clot. That's what they thought you were dealing with. The next thing you knew, you were waking up and it was Father's Day, and you thought, wait a minute, it was going to be Mother's Day. You lost a month. You were in a coma.
That's right. That Monday, I remember laying in bed, talking to my wife, and as far as I knew, I went to sleep. The next thing I woke up one morning. It was about 3-4 in the morning, and one of those early morning newscasts was on, and the newscaster said, "And this weekend will be Father's Day." And I looked up and I'm like, did he just say Father's Day?
In your book, A Stroke of Faith, you say that moment when you awakened a whole month later, you were aware of God's presence. God was there. And yet in your life journey to that point, God had been quite remote. Your words.
That's right. While my whole life, we went to church on Sundays and we were raised in the church, but I probably viewed it more as if Sunday was God's day, and then the other 6 days, I was in control, but God was in control on Sunday. But that moment when I woke up that first day, and Brenda told me I had suffered 2 strokes, I'll be honest with you, it shakes you to your core. And I was devastated. As I laid in that bed at 46, I was devastated. And I remember, and this is kind of a funny story, as Brenda told me the story that I had these 2 strokes, and she told me, hey, you've been in the hospital for 6 weeks, and I've stayed here with you every night to make sure you're okay. And it's about 6 o'clock. She goes, but I'm gonna go home now, and I'm gonna let you get some rest. And I thought to myself,
Don't leave me.
exactly. I'm like, you're gonna leave now? But she really, what she was trying to do is let me deal with all this bad news, and she was absolutely correct, because as she left, I tell you, I was overwhelmed.
And really, it was Brenda who introduced you to the reality of a God who cares about every activity, every moment of your life.
Absolutely. My wife has been wonderful through this process. That first day, she was absolutely wonderful. I'll tell you another story. As I was going through the 60 days of the 2 months of rehabilitation, and once again, I was being beat down, and each time I was getting beat down, God would come back and would lift me up. And I tell you, that first day when Brenda told me I suffered the 2 strokes, I was feeling bad. And then God reminded me of the 1 Corinthians 10:13. Now, and that helped me get through those first few weeks. But then the reality, when I realized, even though people tell you you've had the 2 strokes and you can't walk, when you then have to try to get out that bed, the reality of not being able to walk hits you all over again. And
You went through a long chapter of being able to do nothing, paralyzed.
It hits you again. And once again, I was getting beat down. Well, as we were going to rehab and getting in this, Brenda's helping me get in the wheelchair, and the wheelchair to the car, and then going down to rehab, and I'm struggling in rehab, right? I can't walk, I can't use my left hand, right? If you told me your name, I couldn't remember after 5 minutes. I mean, I'm struggling with everything. And as we were leaving, I was getting beat down, and I'll be honest, my face was being challenged, and I was losing the battle. And as we got in the car, instead of going towards my faith, I went to where I was comfortable. And I went back to the corporate world, because, I was a CFO and a CEO, right? This is what I did. And in the corporate world, when things didn't go right, you made changes. I made changes. So as we got in the car that day, I looked at Brenda, I go, Brenda, this isn't working. And Brenda pulls the car off to the side of the road, and she goes, what do you mean? And I'm like, this isn't working. I'm never gonna get better. I need to change out my physical therapist, my occupational therapist, and my speech therapist. More, I was firing everybody.
You're blaming everybody else.
Right, because as an executive, when things don't go right, you make changes. So I was making changes. And Brenda looked at me and said, and this one gets back to your point about what God will do. She could have told me any number of things. She could have said, hey, Mark, you know what? You're from New York City. You're the first kid in your family graduating from school. You worked hard. Worked at Arthur Anderson. You had a wonderful career. Work hard. You'll get through this. But that's not what she said. What she looked at me and she goes, Mark, you got to trust God. And I tell you, that was a turning point for me. I needed to hear that one more time. I needed God to reach me and say, son, trust me, I got this. And it was wonderful.
New man, new life. We're going to find out what that life looks like today. You still got a new suit for every day of the month. Something, some people think if I trust in Christ, he's going to make me something I'm not.
Right.
You've kept some of those good things, and we're going to find out more about Mark's new life right after this.